Welcome back. So in the last section, we talked about temperature, colors, and complementary colors. And we kind of saw some examples of what those look like and what they do for your work. So we're going to move on to Roman numeral C, which is our number groups. So N is for number. And the first one you can see on the screen is monochromatic. That's spelled M-O-N-O, and chromatic is C-H-R-O-M-A-T-I-C. Mono means one, the number one. Chroma means color. So if you're wondering what monochromatic means, it's over here on your screen. So you can create an entire work of art basically using your one color plus black or white. And that is all created, these two pieces, using contrast and value. I think maybe there was a neutral brown in this piece here. This is a section of a painting that I created probably a good 30 years ago. So monochromatic, those are really nice color schemes. You can create a whole work of art with one color. The next color grouping is triadic. That's Roman numeral 2C with a small number 2. I should go back though, I forgot to give you some examples of monochromatic color schemes. So you can pick any color on the color wheel, like say we're gonna do a monochromatic with the color green. That one is popping to mind. So you can think of a whole slew of different types of greens, all the way from a light green, maybe like a spring green or a sea green. Sea green. Or you can think of a green stone like an emerald, or a dark green, maybe a jungle green. So you can think of lots of different types of greens. You probably have some words for those that you've already used, maybe in an English language arts class. So a triadic color scheme, you can probably figure out tri, like triangle, right, means 3. And those are actually found on your color wheel using an equilateral triangle. So those are found on the wheel in a triangle. Now you already know 2 of those, whether or not you were conscious of it. You're probably not thinking, but one is primaries. Those are the reds, yellows, or blues, or like your secondary colors. So if you look at the example on the page, you see pink, blue, and yellow. You're probably saying, well, Mrs. Shadbolt, red is our primary color. Well, pink is a tint of red, so that's why it's in the same family. So that would work, that example there. Primaries are very dynamic. You see them in like sports, franchise, uniforms. They're also used in primary classrooms, elementary school classrooms. They're very active colors. You see them on toys. You see them in comic book heroes. They're really bright and bold, dynamic, moving. The other group that I mentioned was secondary colors. Those were really popular in the early 2000s with interior decorating. So if you went into Taco Bell or Panera, you would see a lot of those. Orange, violet, and green tend to be like fruit and vegetable colors. So they're supposed to emulate hunger. So you might have seen a lot of those colors. They were very popular in late 90s, early 2000s in interior decorating. Now we've kind of moved back into grays again. All right, so moving on, our next section are analogous colors, A-N-A-L-O-G-O-U-S. Analogous means similar. So I'm going to put that into my notes. Similar. I'm going to check your notes, so make sure they're complete. You'll get some points so that we can make sure that you're following along and connecting with this material. So these are found next to each other on the wheel. So they're neighbors. Neighbors on the wheel. So they're next door neighbors, okay? So you just start anywhere on your color wheel here, say maybe blue, and then we'll go into blue, green, and then green, yellow, and then yellow. So usually with analogous color scheme, you see more like 4 or 5 colors. You could just have a few, like as low as 3, but don't go all the way around the wheel. I would say if you're picking a group, about at most you want to do like 3/4 of the wheel. You don't want to go all the way around. If you use every color under the sun, sometimes you'll have a successful painting, but a lot of times it just ends up looking really busy and almost overwhelming, especially when you're beginning. I would say a minimal color palette is going to aid to a more successful composition. Now, if you look at this example by self-taught painter Henry Rousseau, he's considered a master painter, but he was very self-taught, so it's very abstracted in a way. You see reds, red oranges, yellows, yellow greens, a lot of yellow greens, almost a blue black, but really, it really stops on the warms and just a tad bit into the cools. But you really don't see any of the violets whatsoever. You might see a little bit of red violet and say a shadow tone. So start anywhere on the wheel. Maybe I'll start with yellow, orange, and then you say clockwise or counterclockwise and just take a section. So yellow, orange, yellow, yellow, green, 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 blue. Does that make sense? So again, your notes, it's okay to abbreviate, but on this worksheet that's coming up, you definitely want to include the whole name, write the whole thing out. Don't forget the hyphen in between. All right, now to change value, first of all, value is relative lightness or darkness. Relative lightness or darkness. It could be color or it could be neutral in a work of art. So if you think of a black and white photograph, it's all seen with different shades of gray. It's a contrast between those grays that makes that image leap off the page. So you've got lighter or darker, right? So with most paint, you are going to become lighter or darker using black or white, right? Now, when you start painting, you really don't have to buy all of these types of paint. You could just buy your primary colors. You can mix all your secondaries and just buy a tube of white and buy a tube of black. You can mix this whole thing up off of red, yellow, blue paint, some black, and some white. You don't need to buy every tube of paint that's out there. That would be a waste of your time and money. So that's how you get all of these values just by painting yourself. So on your notes, let's finish up this section. So to make it lighter, well, we'll do darker first because it's in our order. So Roman numeral 3A under the letter S, this is a shade. So think of a shade like the word shadow. So a shadow is darker, right? So it's a color plus black. And that makes it darker. And a classic example of this is navy blue. That is just blue plus black. Okay, just a little bit. Now, always start with the color first when you're mixing, and then add the teensiest little bit of the black, because the black will overwhelm it really quickly if you start with the black and then add the blue to it. You'll just waste a ton of paint. The next one is a tint, T-I-N-T, and then it's a color plus white, unless you're doing watercolor, and then you just add water. Oh, sorry, I had a space for that. Add white or water for watercolor, and that makes your color lighter. All right, so you'll become more comfortable with that with some of my other color mixing worksheets that we'll get into later that show more on value. But really, with this piece and then with understanding mixing with complementary colors for dulling, as well as the value tints and shades piece, you should be able to get a really good value range and get really comfortable with using paint quickly. All right, I'm going to break this up one more time and then we'll get back into it. So thank you for your time and patience, and just hold tight for the next video. Thanks.